right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to go over a few items for the January and February month-by-month checklist. As a reminder, the full year's checklist is located in the assessment library and has every action item for all of our assessments broken down by month. So for January, just a few highlights. On the 25th, the ACT approved accommodations for ACT and eligible examinees through the test accessibility and accommodation system is due. Also, schools should be accessing the LEAP Connect and ELPT online tools training, and the management of students in TIDE for our English language proficiency test and in eDirect for LEAP Connect should take place as well. Test security, preparation, and administration training for ELPT and LEAP Connect in Law 1 to your school test coordinators should take place this month, and then those school test coordinators should be delivering that training to personnel at their sites that will be involved with assessing. Also, the spring data submission of class schedules for high school LEAP 2025 testers will begin. This is TFDL. This is important for you all to know because your data managers will be working on this. So their entries for this impact how students are uploaded in the system and how we connect them to the right assessments. Also, for ACT Online, the creation of test sessions and assigning students to test sessions is also available. And then test setup and test administrator management for LEAP Connect and Law 1 is available. Also this month for our selected schools, they will begin NAEP testing. So each of those schools that has been selected knows when they are doing that, but it does begin at the end of this month. For February, some key tasks to think about are attending the monthly call, that is on February 12th. The other Tuesdays will be our office hours. The planning and administering of the interim assessments and using that data in PLCs. Also working with your SPED team to support the continuous evaluation of accessibility and accommodations effectiveness and to revise your IAP, IEP, EL or PNP documents. March 1st is the deadline for those to be final for the LEAP 2025 grades 3 to 8. And March 15th is the deadline for high school students with accessibility and accommodations. Also, there is a deadline for submitting to College Board the complete disability documentation for students that are taking the exam this year. And then the audit of TFDL, the Spring High School LEAP 2025 testers, and the deadline to submit class schedule corrections is also in February. All right, moving on to accountability. We have a few updates that I'll go through real quickly. For cohort graduation data certification, school systems and schools are going to review rosters that include all the data used to calculate the cohort graduation rate and the strength of diploma index in early March. So this is the final opportunity to request any changes. For each cohort member, schools will be checking the graduation status, school enrollment, AP, CLEP scores, and credentials. The review will also include these three things: an annual exit code review for randomly selected students who transfer to out-of-state and approved non-public schools. All students exited as home study who have no approval on file with the LDOE will also be included in the audit. Schools are required to provide documentation for all transfer types included in the audit. The second thing is a new certification review of data that will be included in the new accountability system for alternative schools. And the third thing is a session for the upcoming January and February supervisor and principal collaborations will take place to support and preview the important data certification information. Performance profile results are a great tool to support site improvement. We provide several supports to assist site personnel with understanding the information that is in the profile. Linked here, you'll find the rating calculator, which explains how performance ratings are derived, an informational webinar recording, frequently asked questions, and tips for sites, which contains action steps for improvement and additional informative links. For the fall 2018 class results, not only should sites ensure that their teachers receive the results and feedback from their observations, but site leaders should also work with teachers to compare their results to the previous year and identify areas to target for improvement and use new strategies to meet their goals. For assessment and curriculum, February 28th is the second of the 3 annual child assessment checkpoints. All early childhood teachers should be documenting progress of their children in their classroom by submitting evidence in the GOLD online system so that performance levels can be finalized for the upcoming checkpoint. And then for infant class, if your school system is the lead agency for your community network, you and your network partners with infant classrooms should be preparing for the infant class observations, which will be a requirement beginning next school year, 2019-2020. The Growth to Mastery rosters that were provided to school systems in the summer will be updated. The update will reassign students to schools based on our October 1 enrollment in SIS. All rosters will be distributed via the secure FTP, and the original rosters can be found in eDirect for K-8 schools and then on the FTP for your high schools. Students will be expected to meet the annual targets that are provided on the rosters. However, if they do not meet the target, the value added model will be used to compare each student's growth to the growth of their peers. All right, moving into assessment administration. All of these slides were just reminders for you all. So as you are planning for LEAP Connect, these are the same steps that we would do for any other assessments in site. If you are new to the role or you have a new technology coordinator, this would be a really great place to refer to. So before LEAP Connect testing begins, these things are great steps to make sure that your TSM and your devices are connected and working properly. So please make sure your schools and technology team know these things. And the technology check is still the same. So there is a technology check located on the home screen of Insight. And if you need more assistance, if the readiness check does not show all green check marks that you're good to go, please use the technology user guide in eDirect. We also have our technology FAQ. This is for your tech directors or your tech coordinators at a site. We also have the technical troubleshooting tips. This is great for district assessment staff and school level assessment staff to help troubleshoot issues that may come up in the moment. And our technical assistance protocol is still the same. So as LEAP Connect and ELPT testing approaches, please make sure that everyone involved with assessment knows that this is the protocol that we will continue to use for any questions. Anything that is related to the student testing in the system is a question that can go to either DRC or AIR, and all other questions can come to us. As a reminder for Homebound students, if you are testing Homebound students, the same options you had last school year for testing these students are the same for this year. So it is required in policy that Homebound students participate in state testing. The materials that the test administrator uses are secure, and so the same processes that the school test coordinator would use for their other test administrators should be used for the test administrator going to the home. The test will be administered with the same rules, same level of security, same administration procedures. and then accommodations for that student would be documented on their accommodations plan. The 4 options below, again, are the same as last year, so you can do the exact same thing. If you are new to testing homebound students and need support in one of these options, please let your tech coordinator know, or you can reach out to us. We have a few reminders for test security. Again, these are not new, but as we are about to open 2 testing windows, I just wanted to make sure that this was information that you recently heard. So as you know, district test coordinators are required to investigate irregularities that call into question the security of the assessment or the accuracy of the data. Any testing irregularities that are investigated should be initiated by the test administrator and have something submitted in writing to the school test coordinator. If the investigation results in a voided test, then you all as the DTC will go into the system, eDirect or Tide, and void that test. If a test is voided, the DTC must also still submit that testing irregularity form to assessment at LA.gov. When completing an investigation, the 3 things that are the most important to think about are having written details of the event that happened, a list of all the people that were involved, so students, test administrators, proctors, school test coordinators, and then interviews with those people. And these items on the next couple of slides are still the same process that we've had for the past couple years, but definitely give a little bit more detail on what would be used in an investigation and submitted to assessment at LA.gov. All students should take the appropriate grade level or grade span assessment for Lead Connect and ELPT. All official grade assignments are in SIS, and so changes must be documented in SIS. If a student takes an assessment that is on a grade level lower than their enroll grade, the test will be voided. Also, as a reminder, we still have a contract that we negotiated with Cavion for monitoring, investigation, and training services. If you'd like more information about that, you can use the links on this slide to get information about all of the services they provide and fee schedules. If you do decide to work with Cavion, you will be able to access Cavion Core, which is the online system that lets you as a district test coordinator monitor your schools in real time. And so this is what it looks like. And there are tons of things that Cavion does to support districts during this process. So if you're interested, definitely check out the links on the previous slide. As a reminder, any staff members that are involved with testing must be trained in test security and administration before the test begins. They must sign the pre and post oath of security and confidentiality forms as well. Voids should be entered into eDirect or Tide at the end of each week. Directions on how to do that are in the user guides linked here. And then all testing irregularity forms that come to assessment at LA.gov are due by the end of the window, so March 15th. All right, a few reminders for LEAP 2025, the TCM and the TAM for grades 3 to 8 paper-based and grades 3 to 8 computer-based manuals have been posted in eDirect, so that's a total of 4. So you have a TCM and TAM for grades 3 to 4 paper, and then you have a TCM and TAM for grades 3 to 8 online. Also, as a reminder, we have some new social studies assessment designs this year. So as you know, we analyzed the past few years of assessment data and met with multiple stakeholders. And we decided that shortening the grades 3 and 4 social studies summative assessments would help reduce testing time, and that would be about 25%. We also have grades 5 to 8 that will be shortened by removing an item set and embedded field test items. We are also only selecting certain schools to be in the field test for grades 5 to 8. So not every school and every class in grades 5 to 8 will take the field test session. We will just do a sample of those schools, and those districts will find out within the next few weeks. Those emails will come from me to superintendents and to you all to let you know which of your schools was selected and which grade was selected. This year, we will also collect and analyze data for our science assessments, and so we will be looking to see if similar reductions could be applied to the science assessment next school year. We hosted 3 webinars on the practice test. The webinar slides and recordings are located in the practice test library. There were 2 types of webinars. There was one for our teachers and supervisors and principals, so very school staff focused, and then another one that was for district staff. These 2 webinars reviewed best practices for using the practice test as an instructional tool, common misuses of the practice test to avoid, and then information about all of the resources that exist. All of the practice test grades 3 to 8 materials are posted in eDirect, so that includes your teacher access versions, your accommodated materials, answer keys, and anything else that you would need to administer the assessment for grades 3 to 8. Also, the parent guide to the practice test has been updated and posted to the library. The final practice test webinar for supervisors has been rescheduled. So again, we did 3 of these, 3 for school level as the audience, and then we did 2 for the district audience. And we had to reschedule this one because of some issues with Zoom when the original date was. So this will happen Thursday, the 24th. It'll be at 10 o'clock. The link, phone number, and meeting ID are located here. Again, this is for district test coordinators and their staff and any other supervisors that have not heard this information. It is a repeat of the 2 that were done in the fall. So if you attended one of those, it is the same webinar. A few more things about our practice tests. Our teacher access, as I mentioned before, is available. So teachers can access the practice test using our teacher access link. And then we also have our practice test quick start guide that gives the usernames and password for the teacher access link. For students, all grades and courses are available for them to use. They are available in Insight, and all of the resources to administer the assessment are in eDirect and the practice test library. And these next few slides just link some instructional support for 3 to 8 LEAP 2025, and then for our high school LEAP 2025. All right, I'm going to pause just a second for some questions. We have a question about the updated growth to mastery rosters. So eDirect will have your K-8, and then the FTP will have your high school. The next question is about speech to text and how to use speech to text on LEAP Connect or LEAP 2025. So speech to text is different than text to speech. This is typically a device or an app on a computer that a student uses where they speak into it, and the device is typing the information that the student is saying. So it is like a dictation. Students who have the speech to text accommodation on their accommodations plan will still be able to use that device during testing. So it should mirror exactly what they do every day in class. If they have a para or a teacher that assists with that, ideally you would mirror that same thing during the operational test. There's 3 things to think about when you're using speech to text or word prediction advice or any other sort of assistive technology. The first thing is, if the device prints, or if you print what the student has entered in the system, that piece of paper becomes secure material. So it's almost as if it's scratch paper that would come to the school test coordinator, they would securely destroy. Or if it is printed and then the TA is transferring their answers because the student also has an accommodation of transferred answers, the TA would do that and then give it to the school test coordinator to securely destroy. So the first thing is, if it prints, it is secure material and it must be securely destroyed. The second thing is, it must be cleared before and after every test session. So anything that is used during session 1 has to be erased before the student starts session 2. The third thing is that the student can only access the speech to text technology. So if a student is using an app or a program on a computer, the only thing the student can access is that program. They cannot go to a website. They cannot go to Microsoft, publisher. They can't go and play solitaire. So those things would be monitored by a teacher anyway, and it's most likely that that student is tested individually, given that they're doing speech to text. So I doubt that will be an issue because the level of monitoring is so high in an individual testing situation. So I just want to repeat this. For speech to text, this is a student who has this accommodation checked on the accommodations plan. They use it all day, every day, and it should be used the same way during testing. So whatever system or program or device they use, yes, they can use that for testing. The 3 things to keep in mind are, if it prints, it becomes secure material and it must be securely destroyed. It must be cleared before and after each session, and the student cannot access any other program. All right, the next question is, for the schools that are chosen for the grades 5 to 8 social studies field test session, will they be given additional time? Yes, it will be a whole extra session. It will not be included in the 3 sessions that already exist. So if your school is selected, you in eDirect and your school test coordinator in eDirect will see a 4th session appear only for those sites. And so you would schedule it as the 4th session, just like you would schedule any other session. So it is a completely separate session. And yes, that the time will be specific to that session and it will not interfere with the other one. Okay, we have a question about eDirect and where do teachers go for the practice test information. So eDirect is a website that DRC uses to house all things testing before, during, and after for district test coordinators and any other personnel involved with assessment. So your initial experience with eDirect would have come in an email giving you a login and password. And if you have not gotten that yet, please let me know so I can have DRC send that again. Once you have access as the district test coordinator, you have ultimate access to everything about kids in that system. And then you will assign logins and passwords and permissions to anyone else that you want in that system. And they should not have the same permissions as yours because you have ultimate access. Also, for teachers to get information about practice testing, I would have them go to the practice test library At the very top of that page, there are some guidance documents and webinars that they can access. And then in a few slides before this one, there was information to our teacher access link. We have one website that is the teacher access version for all of our assessments that are not summative. So all of our LEAP 360 assessments and all of our practice tests are in one website, and it's called the teacher access link. And so they can log in and review the items. They can also access the teacher access version in eDirect and check out what the items are, what the alignment is, what the answers are to use for professional development and before they use it in the class. We have a question about practice test reports or LEAP 360 reports. So the answer is, do you get the whole report if they don't complete it or if the teacher hasn't scored? So any item that is not educator scored, you would be able to see the results for on a report. But the full report and all the summary reports cannot be developed without the entire test being completed and scored by the teacher. So yes, you will get some data, but you will not get the full picture of the data. If the teacher scores the constructed response items, then a day later, that information would display on the report. For practice tests or LEAP 360, you could just take one session. We do have that force submit button now in eDirect. So if you wanted to just have students take a few items or have them take one or more sessions, but not the entire test, you could use that to help the data go through in order to get a report. Where are the usernames and passwords for the teacher access link? So there are usernames and passwords in the practice test quick start guide, and those are only for the practice test. And then for our LEAP 360 diagnostics and interims, those are in those quick start guides. So the diagnostic quick start guide, the interim quick start guide, and the practice test quick start guide give usernames and login passwords to all of those assessments. We have a question about if you are missing materials that have already been delivered. So for Lead Connect and Law 1, those materials are delivered today. So I would wait till the end of the day to make sure that you have everything. And if you don't, you need to call DRC. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into ACT and worksheets. But great questions, so please keep sending them in and I'll check back in a second. So for ACT and worksheets, we have a few important dates. So by the 25th, as you know, the 25th is a huge date for ACT. So ACT approved accommodations are due. If you are doing ACT online, the Proctor Cache software and setup Proctor caching must be installed. There's also a mock administration that should be completed, and then verifying your student information in PA Next for ACT must be done. If you have any students added after the deadline, they will not receive barcode labels. So please make sure by this Friday you have all the things you need for ACT. Also, as a reminder, the ACT match list is the list of all the 12th grade students with an ACT score on record with ACT. So these students are not required to take the ACT in the spring, but they can still take it to get a higher score. The no match list is a list of the 12th graders without an ACT score on record, and they are required to take the ACT test before the end of this school year. The only exception would be for students who take LEAP Connect. The ACT match, no match lists are already in the FTP. So please use this list to make sure that all of your seniors without a score are in PA Next. Also, ACT participation is not based on the assignment of a student to a graduation cohort. So if the student is in grade 12, has no score, and has not taken the LEAP Connect, then the student must test. Work key scores will not be used if a student has not taken the ACT. If a new student has an IEP indicating Law 1 or LEAP Connect but has never taken the test, make sure that that student is taking Law 1 and LEAP Connect this year. Late consideration requests are only for students new to your school, or a student has been newly identified as needing accommodations. The reconsideration requests are for initial requests that were denied by ACT, and there may have been some additional information that was needed in order to have the request approved. So missing the deadline of January 25th isn't a reason to have the late consideration, and it won't be accepted by ACT. This is for requests that were already submitted, and then they were denied because of some missing information, and you were submitting that missing information. There will be a webinar on February 13th, and it is a Q&A about ACT test administration. So you definitely want to register for that if you or your school test coordinators are new to ACT. And as I mentioned, the ACT match and no match student level rosters are located on the FTP. The information about those is also located on this slide as a reminder. So if you need to send this to your school test coordinators, this would be a really good slide to summarize what to do with that list. For ACT Online, districts this year, again, have the choice to do paper or online for ACT. The paper testing date is 1 day, whereas the online testing window for both standard and accommodations is 6 days. So it's Tuesday through Thursday of 2 weeks, March 12th through 14th, and then the 19th through the 21st. School systems must indicate a testing delivery mode of paper or online by Friday, January 25th in PA Next. So remember, if you are choosing to do online testing, there are technical checks that must be completed to ensure that the ACT tests are compatible and security measures can be met with your school system. All right, so for advanced placement, we have a couple of new things. AP Potential is available to school and district administrators who are seeking another tool for identifying kids that possess potential for success on AP exams. The AP Potential results are based on the PSAT and AP exam performance correlation study. The digital platform provides a full list of the PSAT test takers along with each student's potential based on that performance to a score of 3, 4, or 5 on the AP. The platform also offers like a parent letter template that can be customized. If you are going to attend the webinar that is listed here, just to make sure you register on time, please click the professional learning section of this link and then scroll to webinars, and you'll go to January and you'll see this webinar listed. The College Board has set up a web page that spells out the 2019-2020 academic year changes in more detail. So next year, there will be some updates to advanced placement. So this is for next school year, 2019-2020. So there's some timeline changes for when students declare they'll take the AP exam, the cost, how students sign up, and then how test coordinators are notified. The College Board's also offering individual professional development scholarships to those who teach AP that are serving economically disadvantaged and rural communities. The application for this is linked here, and the deadline is February 12th. All right, we have a question about ACT, if there's a manual or some sort of webinar to walk through the system. So yes, on the ACT resources slide in this webinar, there are some links to, one to the ACT state testing site, which has every document you would need, but we also did a webinar that LDOE did just on ACT administration, and that presentation is in the assessment library under ACT and WorkKeys. So ACT has some resources and they have webinars, and then LDOE, we put out a webinar on ACT administration. So those would be the places I would go to first if you're looking for some sort of overview of how to use the system and what tasks need to be completed throughout this process. All right, so for LEAP Connect and Law 1, as I mentioned before, materials are being delivered to your school system today, which means tomorrow is the opening of the window for additional material orders. Our testing window is right around the corner, so February 4th, the window will open, and then it will close on March 15th. All students who take the LEAP Connect and Law 1 instead of the regular assessment must meet participation criteria outlined in Bulletin 1530. School systems were required to add the assessment results that determine the student's eligibility based on a significant cognitive impairment or adaptive behavior. The LDOE will be conducting audits of IEPs in any school system that exceeds the 1% cap, and the LDOE may audit other IEPs randomly. Scores from students who are found to be ineligible will be converted to the lowest scale score and assigned 0 points in the school performance score. So similar to how we do audits for all of our assessments, this will also be included. The next few slides highlight reminders for LEAP Connect and Law 1. Last month and in previous months, we've done a really deep dive into the preparation for LEAP Connect and Law 1, but the next few slides are just highlights. So this is not the entirety of what has been delivered. It's really just some main points we wanted to make sure that you heard again. So the window opens on February 4th. Anyone who is helping with administration of this test must be trained in test security, administration, and have the opportunity to prepare materials as needed prior to the test. There is a LEAP Connect assessment guide. There are test coordinator manuals and test administrator manuals that are available for your coordinators and teachers for them to review as well. Again, a few reminders. LEAP Connect is administered one-on-one. So this is the test administrator and one student using Insight, the directions for test administration, the DTA, the reference materials, and writing stimuli for whichever grade they are in. So all these passages, items, and response options are designed to be read to the student through either the text-to-speech on the computer or by the test administrator. All of these materials, the online testing platform, DTA, reference materials, writing stimuli, must be used at the same time to administer the LEAP Connect. For LEAP Connect, not Law 1, if the TA attempts 4 tasks in a content area and the student is unresponsive, you may exit and close the test. You can attempt more than 4 tasks, but the TA must attempt at least 4, and the student is non-responsive, and then the TA may exit and close the test. Also, similar to how we did an end of test survey for grades 3 to 8 last year, we will be doing one for our 11th grade test administrators this year. So at the end of the test, the TA will see a survey display, and so they can submit feedback to us on their experience on administering the test. Also, as a reminder, there are tons of built-in supports for Lead Connect. It is how the test was designed. So a lot of things that we would normally say are accommodations are just part of how this test is administered. So the test is administered one-on-one, it's on time, it's all read aloud. Answers recorded is included in the administration if needed. Transferred answers is included if needed. The use of manipulatives and any other communication devices are just part of how this test was designed. Things that would be an accommodation for LEAP Connect, which would be on their IEP, are calculator, assistive technology, and then Braille. And Braille is only for our 3rd and 4th graders for one section of the test, which is the foundational reading section. So those students would have Brailled items come with your materials that are delivered today, and it is only grades 3 and 4 for the foundational reading section. All of the materials that I mentioned before, the DTA, the reference materials, and the writing stimuli are all secure documents, and they have specific instructions for the TA when administering the test. The TA can have up to 2 weeks before the day they administer the test to review the DTA and the materials and the writing stimuli to make sure that they have what they need as far as manipulatives and materials in order to properly administer this to the student. You'll notice this year, based on your feedback, we added the answer choices to this packet. So if you want to put the answer choices in front of the student with the paper that it comes on, you can do that. So we got feedback last year asking for the option. So we have the online version of it. And then we also had feedback asking for the option to have it on paper in case the student needed to manipulate the answers. And so those are provided as well. And that TA would know if those need to be used and what they need to do to prepare for that. If a TA does not administer the test with all of these documents at the same time, it can result in voiding the test. So again, the directions for test administration is an actual script for the test administrator to read, and it also provides actions for every item that the TA must do, whether it's pointing to the answer choices, pulling one of the reference materials or the writing stimuli, or handing them manipulatives, or describing things. Every item has something that the TA must do with the student, and so the DTA is what they should be looking at. For packaging the materials to go back to GRC, all of the secure materials for LEAP Connect will be returned with your Law 1 secure materials. So they'll all be packaged together. Because the LEAP Connect materials aren't scoreable, because the responses are input into Insight, there's no certain order in which you need to package those materials. So none of the materials for LEAP Connect are scored because it's all supporting documents for the TA. The student's answers are in Insight. UPS is pre-scheduled to arrive at your school system office on the 18th. There's no need for you to call UPS. The work has already been done for you. And the materials that we just mentioned need to be returned. So the DTA, the procedures for assessing students who are blind, deaf, or deafblind, Braille materials, the math reference and ELA reference materials can be securely destroyed by the school test coordinator or according to your policy. All of these directions are in the LEAP Connect TCM and eDirect if you need to refer to them. All right, so for Law 1, we have a few differences. So Law 1, again, is just for science, and it's just for grades 4, 8, and 11. The materials that you get for Law 1 will also be delivered today. You'll have administrator booklets, student booklets, response documents, and task descriptions, and these are all secure. This is a difference in the administration from Leap Connect. So for Law 1, students should attempt at least 5 tasks within a content area, and if the student is unresponsive, then the TA can exit or close the test, and the student can go back to class. So this is different than Leap Connect. Leap Connect, the student must attempt at least 4. For Law 1, they must attempt at least 5. Again, for our technical assistance protocol, it is the same as we always use, but again, for Leap Connect, Law 1, if you have questions or concerns, please follow this and reach out to DRC or us for any assistance. All right, so let me pause for a second. We have a couple of questions that have come in. We have a question about ordering additional materials. So schools would need to indicate to you as the DTC that they need additional materials. So some districts have their own form, some do it through email. It's whatever process works for you, but you will actually enter in those additional material orders into the system. We have a question about Leap Connect and Law 1 materials. If you are finished, can you send them back on a different shipping day? I will need to ask DRC that. So let me check with them. I am not sure if you can send them back early or not. So a question about ACT. So school test coordinators for the ACT system have a lot more permissions or visibility into the system than for our other assessments. So school test coordinators do have access to do more things with ACT than our eDirect or ELPT assessments. The district test coordinator is pretty hands-off for the most part with ACT, but all of the directions for your school test coordinator about how to set up things for ACT are in those documents that were linked earlier in the slide. Okay, let's move on to ELPT. So additional materials, that window has already opened because your materials already have been delivered to your district, and that was last week. So when we are talking about ELPT materials, this is really for your kindergarten and first grade writing supplement papers that you receive. If you need more of those, you can request additional materials in the window in Tide. Our ELPT window is the same as Leap Connect and Law 1, so that's February 4th through March 15th. Next school year in 2019-2020, the scores from ELPT will be included in SPS. So this school year, 2018-2019, growth results and accountability outcomes will be reported but not included in SPS. It's very important that all English learners participate in ELPT, as the 2019 and 2020 test scores will be used to determine growth in 2020. So the growth component will be weighed equally to the number of test students that are included for that student in the assessment index. So a 5th grade student taking ELA Math, Science, and Social Studies would generate 4 units. A high school student taking geometry, biology, and English 2 would generate 3 units because they are in 3 classes. For ELPT, again, the majority of the preparation and administration information was given in months prior to this. So these are just a few reminders. There are several trainings that are available in the assessment library that we have done throughout the year. The manuals are also located in the ELPT portal. The headsets that were used last school year can still be used this school year, but you definitely want to make sure that your students have gone in and practiced with that online tools training to make sure that their headsets are still working properly and that they are used to the system. As you know, December 31st was the deadline for using the previous version of the secure browser. And so that would have been rolled out through your district technology coordinator last semester. So we are using a new browser now, and that is used for both the ELPT and the ELPS. The accommodations from the EL checklist cannot be used for ELPT. So this is an assessment assessing their English language proficiency, and so those accommodations are not to be used when taking this assessment. This chart here summarizes those features. If you do have a student who has on their IEP a document in hearing impairment, please email us regarding possible domain exemptions, such as the listening section. So if you have questions about that, definitely reach out to us and we can help you make sure that that's reflected in the system. The accessibility and accommodations manual for ELPT is also linked here too for your reference. So for ELPT, you all are responsible for arranging the materials pickup with FedEx. So there is no pre-scheduled pickup day for ELPT. They just must be returned by March 22nd. There is a packing materials for return document that has directions on how to pack and ship the scorable and non-scorable materials linked here. You will use the return shipping labels provided in the initial shipment to make sure that your boxes are accurately tracked. And again, if you need additional materials, such as the return materials, you can place those in the system, or you can call the help desk. And we will still follow the technical assistance protocol listed here. The biggest difference is that you all will contact AIR for any technical questions or concerns. There is an email, chat, and phone number for AIR. All right, let's jump into LEAP 360. So this is just a reminder of the report schedule for the last phase of interims that rolled out. We do have our student response map, test session response map, district data file, and student summary reports available. Those are available 24 hours after completing the test and educator scoring. And then the following dates are for the last set of reports that will come out for our interim. If you are looking for ways to assess your K-2 students, we do have the K-2 formative tasks available in eDirect. So this is a separate tab called K-2 formative tasks, and they are student-centered, engaging tasks in e-learning and math that are aligned to our standards. So if you have not explored these, I highly recommend you check these out. We have additional information about these if you need on our LEAP 360 and assessment library pages. As a reminder, for 2019-2020, we will continue to provide LEAP 360 at no cost to school systems. As in previous years, school systems will be required to sign an MOU, which protects the content of the test. The MOU requires the completion of Amendment 2 to continue using LEAP 360 through June 30th of 2020. And that amendment may be downloaded from the assessment library, and it is due June 28th. School systems should anticipate an annual fee for the 2020-2021 school year. All right, we have just a quick reminder about NAEP. So as I mentioned earlier, NAEP begins January 28th. It runs through March 8th. The NAEP reading, math, and science assessments are given to students in selected schools in grades 4, 8, and 12. The reading and math assessments are computer-based and the science is paper-based. School test coordinators from selected schools have been working on activities to prepare for the assessment since last month. We provided the link to school test coordinators to access their information in the My NAEP system. All of the preparation activities must be completed prior to the call that has been scheduled with them with USDOE's NAEP team. All of the activities that they are to complete must be done prior to the call, and they include reviewing and verifying the list of students that are selected, completing some special education and English learner student information, notifying parents, and then planning for the assessment day. So please make sure your school test coordinators are prepared for this phone call with USDOE. All right, a few assessment reminders. We had several of you ask if we could just repeat some of the accommodations and accessibility information that we've delivered over the past several years. So we have a document called the Accessibility and Accommodations User Guide. This document houses all access for all, accessibility, and accommodations, and what they look like on paper or computer-based assessments. It also gives a bunch of information about how to support teams making these decisions and guidelines and procedures for different things. So as we released several years ago, we have 3 categories now of these features. So we have features for all, which is available for all students to use. So an example of this would be a Post-it note, a highlighter. Every kid can use these features. Accessibility features can also be used by all students, but they must be documented on an accommodations plan or a personal needs profile. And there's something that must be activated in eDirect in order for them to receive this accessibility feature, or something that must be planned for by the test coordinator, such as small group testing. So that would be activated in eDirect by selecting the checkbox. And then the school test coordinator has to plan for that. They have to find the room they're going in, which kids are going to be in there. They need to find a TA to administer the test. There's some sort of planning that happens. And then with accommodations, this is the same as it's always been. These are for students who have an accommodation that is accommodating a disability, and they are located on an accommodations plan, whether that's an IEP, IAP, or English learner checklist. So for features for all, again, they are used by all students. So every student has blank scratch paper or graph paper. They have the calculator in our calculator section. They have different tools and features in eDirect or on paper about color overlay, contrasting colors. They have an equation builder. They can flag or mark items to review. Also, our English learners can have directions in their native language. The test administrator clarifying directions is a feature for all. Masking, headphones, a line guide, zooming or magnification, the measurement tools, redirecting a student to the test is something that is for every student. Any sort of specialized equipment, sticky notes, striking through items, and then our writing and formatting tools. So this is available for every student. These are not accommodations. This is why you don't see any of these things on any accommodations plan. The next category is accessibility features. These are available to all students, but they're documented on some sort of plan. If a student already has an accommodations plan, you will notice these features on the plan, so they can be documented through a plan that already exists. If the student does not have an accommodations plan, then a personal needs profile would need to be used, and that is where this would be documented. The features listed here are the accessibility features. So individual testing, small group testing, reading aloud to self, adaptive or special furniture, and then math read aloud, whether it's text-to-speech, Kurzweil, recorded voice, or human reader. So all of these things are available for all students. If a student already has an accommodations plan, it should be documented there. If they do not have an accommodations plan, it would be documented on the personal needs profile. And some of these accessibility features would also need to be documented in eDirect. So specialized equipment and furniture is not something that would be checked in the system, but individual testing, small group testing, math read aloud, those would need to be activated in the system. But again, accessibility features are things that have to be documented and planned for, and could possibly be activated within the testing system. So just to clarify, if a student already has an accommodations plan, they do not need an accommodations plan and a personal needs profile. They do not need both. They just need their regular accommodations plan and then have those features checked on there. For accommodations, these provide support for students with disabilities without subverting the meaning of the test. So they are available for students that have a current IEP, IAP, or EL plan. They must be documented on that plan no less than 30 days prior to testing. They are provided to that student all the time, every day in class. It is part of how they work in a classroom. They're also reviewed regularly to make sure that they are effective for that student. They provide equal opportunities without giving students an unfair advantage or invalidate the purpose of the test. And they also allow the test score to reflect the student's proficiencies and provide valid and accurate measures of their abilities. For ELA read aloud, this is, again, all of these things are the same things that have been in place for multiple years. And actually, just to give background, all of these additional categories, so accessibility features and features for all, and in this slide in particular too, these were all released when we adopted new standards. So 5 years ago-ish, when we had new standards, we needed a new assessment. And so to be comparable nationally and to follow universal procedures on accommodations and accessibility features, we implemented this at that time. So the only thing that I can think of that has changed is that last year an accessibility feature was added, which was read aloud to self, and that was universally accepted as an addition to accessibility features. So other than that, these things have been in place for many years since when the new standards were adopted. So for ELA read aloud, the majority of this information is actually in an appendix within the Accessibility and Accommodations Manual, and that's Appendix C. But ELA read aloud is provided to a very small population of students because the entire ELA test can now be read aloud. So since the standards were then integrated and our assessment is integrated, the entire ELA test can be read aloud. And so it is only for students who qualify with these three things. So blindness or visual impairment, and they have not learned Braille, a disability that severely limits or prevents a student from accessing the text, even after varied and repeated attempts to teach the student, and deafness or a hearing impairment. So again, these are not new, but just wanted to reference these again as we jump into testing season. Same with our calculation device and math tools. This information's in the accessibility and accommodations user guide. The calculation device on non-calculator sections is to provide access for kids with a disability that severely limits or prevents them from performing basic calculations. So again, this information is in that guide. For those of you joining the 2 o'clock call, we are almost finished, so please hang on tight. I appreciate your patience. The assessment accommodations audit, as I mentioned earlier, will continue to happen after each administration window. So we are conducting these audits to make sure that kids are receiving the proper accommodations on their assessments. All of our school system planning calls and collaboration dates for the rest of the year are located here. Information about our January and February collaborations are also listed here. The Teacher Leader Summit information is linked here. So we are in the early bird registration phase of the Teacher Leader Summit. So as you know, there is a small cost that is now in place for your employees for the Teacher Leader Summit. So you definitely want to make sure you get in that early bird registration. If you are new or have someone new to your assessment and accountability team, please make sure you submit the contact update form. And the remaining test and accountability monthly calls are listed here as well. So some next steps are listed on this screen. If you have questions or if you entered a question that was not answered, please email me. You can either email me or assessment@la.gov, same thing, and we will get the answers for you. Thank you for spending a few extra minutes this month on the call, so I appreciate it. If you are joining for the non-public 2 o'clock call, I'm going to switch out the presentation, so give me just a second. But the non-public presentation is available in the assessment library under webinars. So if you want to go ahead and pull that up, you can access that through the assessment library.